Hello and welcome to episode number 12 of the Curling Legends podcast. My name's Kevin Palmer, and every week during the curling season, I share a conversation with a player or storyteller from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We cover curling from the early days of the slide through to the adoption of the free guard zone. Paul Gowsell is on the show today. I want to thank you all again for listening and remind you that you can rate us on iTunes. You can also add comments on our webpage at curlinglegends.ca, and you can also post comments on our Facebook page, facebook.com/curlinglegends. As always, I remind you, if you have a friend or family member who is not comfortable with technology and would like to listen to the show, please help them out and show them how to listen either on a computer or ideally with a smartphone. Find one of the many apps that you can play podcasts and help them put that on their phone. Thanks again to Jerry Gertz of Curling Zone for his continued support of the podcast, as well as Steve Lobel, who provided the artwork, and Mark Rogman, who provided the music. Paul Gowsell burst onto the curling scene as a young high school junior in 1975. In that season, his team of third Neil Houston, second Glen Jackson, and lead Kelly Stearne won the Canadian Junior Championships. And as it was in the rules in those days, they had to wait until the following season to travel to Europe for the World Championships. So at that point, Gowsell and his rink was given opportunities to compete in men's bonspiels and cashspiels, and they took full advantage and surprised many, but certainly not Paul, in the success they found in winning money and ultimately winning cars against players who were 5, 10, and 20 years their senior. That rink would go on to win the Worlds in 1976 through some level of controversy based on their use of the push broom. And in Europe, it wasn't the fact that they were using a push broom, but how they were using the push broom, and Paul will talk a little bit about that. And of course, back in Canada at the time, the corn broom was still prevalent for most teams, and Paul will talk at length about how they used the push broom to their advantage in understanding how to maximize its effectiveness against corn. And then Paul will talk about his return trip in winning the Canadians in 1977. That team had Kelly Stearne again at lead, but Neil and Glen had graduated from juniors, and they were replaced with John Ferguson and with Doug McFarlane. They went on to win the Worlds a second time in 1978. Throughout those years, Paul maintained his bonspiel team with Neil and Glen, and they continued to find success in the cashspiel circuit. That team then, when graduating to men's, found themselves in the Brier in their hometown of Calgary in 1980. They had a strong run, but stumbled at the finish and ultimately lost to Al Hackner in the semifinal. Al and his Thunder Bay rink would go on to lose to Rick Folk in the Brier final that year. As of this recording, the last time that Saskatchewan has won the Brier. But at the time, it would have appeared that the young Gowsell would have many Brier appearances, but alas, that was not the case. Ultimately, the team later fell apart. Neil Houston and John Ferguson later went on to play with Ed Lukowich and found success winning the Brier and World Championships in 1986. And then that same team would represent Canada at the Olympics in 1988 in Calgary when curling was a demonstration sport. Paul reflects on all of those past successes and disappointments and also shares a few stories. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Here is my conversation with Paul Gowsell. So start us at the beginning. Like your beginning.
My beginning? When did I start curling?
Yeah. How old were you?
Oh, I was 11 or 12. You know, you'd sneak on the ice when you were 11 and then...
Did your parents curl then?
Yeah, my parents curled. They curled in the mixed leagues and the men's leagues at the Winter Club. So, I mean, we had a junior program at the Winter Club that when you were 12 years old, you could, that's when you could start. Some kids would like to sneak out a little earlier when nobody was looking.
Yeah. And they let you do that. It wasn't a big deal. Nobody seemed to...
Well, you know, I guess they had rules, but...
Yeah.
You know, kids always try and stretch them a little bit.
So did you play other sports at the time? Were you involved in other activity? Like, what else did you do for fun?
Well, I mean, if you know the Winter Club, it's a multi-sport complex. So, I mean, curling and there's all, you know, there's a lot of other sports at the club.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, community sports like soccer and baseball, of course.
So you did everything.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. So were you a sporty guy? Were you pretty good at things just naturally? Like you just
I was. Yeah, I'd say I was pretty good at a lot of the things. I never did play hockey because I got the choice ski equipment or hockey equipment.
Yeah, I heard you were quite a skier as well, right?
I used to race when I was a kid, but it became a bit of an elitist sport. So
yeah.
Anyways.
Were you a rebellious guy? Like you said right away, it was elitist. So did you see that in society?
No. That had nothing to do with it. It was just a matter of, if you wanted to keep racing, you needed to keep your equipment. You had to have top of the line equipment, and you had to be able to go every weekend, and every time, and you gotta go up there, and it wasn't cheap. So, and also when I was packing. When I was a C racer for Ski Meisters, when I was packing the north,
what does that mean?
That means, well, an A racer is one step down from the national team.
Okay.
And then a B is below that and C is below that. And I was just a C racer when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I was packing a powder day at Mount Norquay, and I'm packing the hill for a C race when I'm a D racer, I decided at that point I'd rather be skiing the powder than packing the hill.
Okay. Because you're working there too, or you're just...
Well, no, you just pack it so that you'd have to pack the powder snow so that people could race.
Yeah.
They didn't have cats that would go up that pitch.
So were you in skiing, and I know we're supposed to talk about curling, but in skiing, were you did you enjoy the competition? Like, were you a competitive person naturally?
I was never that good at it. I mean, I never won any races. I mean, I enjoyed it. Sure. Yeah. I like skiing.
You still ski now?
Sure, I do. Yeah, I got a season's pass up at Nikiska and go ski on the man-made ice. It's because it's not far away. It only takes you you can go up there. You can get up there in an hour and a bit, and then you go up for 10 runs and call it a day. So if you've got a pass is $200. So I mean, you can it's something to do in the wintertime. I don't work in the winter, so
yeah. Okay. Well, let's not talk about skiing anymore. This isn't a skiing podcast. That's the other one. We'll do that next time.
Okay.
We're going to talk a bit about the perception of Paul Gowsell so that we can maybe break it down a bit to go, let's see who the real Paul Gowsell is and was, and you probably have more stories about you, some that probably aren't even true that you've heard.
Yeah, you think some got embellished over time?
Yeah, probably, right?
Maybe.
So you started at the Winter Club, you're playing a lot of different sports. Was curling at that point something that you immediately took to, like the minute you started it?
Well, yeah, I like curling because I was good at it at a young age, so it was fun to win.
Right away?
Well, I mean, after 2 or 3 years, I was pretty good at it.
So was there something about it in particular that you enjoyed, like versus playing other sports?
Well, I mean, I later on, I liked it because of the social aspect of it and all the people I met over the years. I mean, that was the best part of the game, really, all the traveling and curling in different places and, meeting everybody from across the country and even around the world. So, that was the best part of the game.
But at the time, it was just...
At the time, well, we were, in high school. We won the high school championship. So it was, we got to represent Alberta. And
yeah, so you were... Well, when did you have your first... So you start playing around 12, 13, you said, was when you really start playing on.
Right. And then when I was in grade 12 in high school, I was 17. So then we went to the national championships in Edmonton.
Yeah, and it was Edmonton.
In 75.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because you won the year.
Yeah, you'd go the following year to the Worlds.
So when you were... Okay, so let's take you... Maybe let's just go a year back before you win that title, right? That Canadian title. So you would have been only barely 15 at the time, or you were just... So 70, let's go back to 74. That's 73, 74 season.
Well, I didn't make the team in 73, 74. We had high school curling.
Was that how it worked? Okay.
They switched from high school to junior curling when I was about 18 or so. Once I got out of high school, it stayed high school for one more year.
Okay.
And that's when Jenkins won out of Prince Edward Island.
Okay.
And then the following year, it jumped back to, they made it a junior. So it was 18 and under or something. And I became a junior. I was in men's the year out of high school, and then the following year I was back in juniors.
So sorry, just going back. So there was a high school tryouts though.
Yes.
At the time. And so it wasn't even a competition, it was just a tryout.
Yeah, there was a high school team and you tried out for the team.
And so you didn't make it your first?
I didn't make it in grade 10 or 11.
Really?
No.
See, I think that would come as a shock to some people. Was it a surprising? Was it a good? Obviously, maybe there's a lot of good curlers at the school.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the curlers in the school were members of the Winter Club.
Yeah.
And it was but it was I think it was more of a political thing, to be honest with you, because my team at the winter club could beat the high school team.
Yeah,
but we couldn't make the team
because you couldn't play it. So so the team in the winter club at that time was who? That was that you grew up with.
Well, at the time, like Neil Houston was on the team, and Brent Syme, who played for Ed, and who else?
Was it Kelly wasn't there?
Kelly made the team he was in grade 11 when I was in grade 12. He made the team.
Okay.
That year.
And that's how that came about. Okay. So was that, and it's interesting even to think about that, because I mean, I never grew up with that idea that you even had to try out I never ever had to try out to get on a curling team, and you did it in grade 10 and 11. That's
curling was a big deal. We had a 12-sheet curling club at the winter club, and it was full of junior curlers.
Yeah.
We had A, B, and C events. Our curling program was big. So
and push brooms. Even back then.
Right? Yeah. There was 2 clubs in Calgary that had push brooms: the North Hill Club and the Winter Club.
Yeah.
The other clubs had corn brooms.
So did you even ever grow up using a corn broom then?
I could swing it. I wasn't very good at it though.
Yeah. But did anybody like your team right off the bat, even from the time you were just starting out, was push brooms?
Well, we'd play with corn brooms and rink rats and cat brooms and all that for fun.
Yeah.
In the club league. But when we were out trying to beat people, we always just used push brooms.
So if you're trying to compete at something, you use the push broom. So that was right from the beginning.
It was just fate. Yeah. That's just our club happened to be.
Yeah,
that's just the way it was.
Yeah. So really, you shouldn't be held responsible for it. It's like,
well, I mean, Les Rowland, he won the Canadian the mixed curling championships, and he was from the winter club, and he'd done that sooner. But I guess we were kind of and then we won the juniors with the push brooms, so we were probably the first ones to do that in Canada. But
so the first year you made the high school team, was that the year then that you won Canadians?
Yes.
Was that okay? So the year before, you didn't even compete in schoolboys at a provincial level because you didn't make your high school.
That's team. Right. I didn't make the team.
It's a different era, right? The way they did that, and so you were still that team, that 76 team was all out of the same school.
Yeah, the 75 team. I graduated in 75, right? So in the 75 team was out of the same high school.
Yeah. And you guys were all close as well? Was that?
Well, we were not at the beginning, but we knew each other well because we played against each other in the junior boys program at the Winter Club.
So that was Neil and Kelly and
Neil and Brent
at the time,
and Brent and
Glen.
No, Glen was with me. Glen curled on my team. He didn't make the team. He made the team as the spare.
Okay, gotcha.
In grade,
for the high school
in grade 11.
Okay,
he was the spare. So Barry Knight was and they had a good team. I mean, they went to the provincial championships. They lost to Rob King in the finals of the.
Was there coaching too? I assume there was a high school coach.
We had a the high school coach got picked.
Yeah,
he didn't know how to curl.
So it was just a teacher.
He was I would say more of a chaperone.
Team manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need someone to keep an eye on these guys. So So they tried to find the largest, most intimidating teacher they could, or somebody that would.
No, they just whoever was crazy enough to take the job on.
So who was that? Who was?
Well, it was
in that Canadians.
Mr. Carr, and there was Mr. Conlon, and one of them was an English teacher, and one of them was a math teacher.
Yeah, did you get along well with these teachers?
Oh yeah, they were good guys. And so I mean, when we won the Canadian championship, they had to flip a coin to see who went to Scotland because they were only going to pay for one coach.
Okay, because they'd gone to the. So that time the schoolboy was there was a provincial play down to get to that piece, and then you had to win that, get to the Canadian level.
And then if you won that, you represented Canada in the World Juniors.
The following year.
So Canada sent their high school team to the World Juniors. Mm-hmm. So we'd get over there, and we would be 18 years old, and we'd be playing against the 21-year-olds from
the World
Norway
Junior at that
Sweden.
point was just barely had begun, right? It was pretty recent.
It had begun 2 years before that, I believe, was when, and Rob King won them both, eh?
Well, so when you were coming up just before that stage, did you also kind of follow the game? Like, did you know a bit about the players, the history? Did you kind of ever
well, of course,
watch it, read some of the old
the CBC Curling Classic on TV, and then you'd always, you'd watch the Brier finals when they'd usually show the semifinal and the final of the Brier on TV, and then you'd probably, and if the World's Championships were in Canada, I think they'd show it, but if they were overseas, they
didn't do that. But you took an interest in it as well, like in terms of the game, and so was there a point there where sort of curling became the real passion versus doing other things? And
well, once we started winning, I mean, right out of high school, we were beating all the men's teams. Yeah. I mean, we'd go to the bonspiels and we'd win. We'd go in 1976 and 1977. I went to 12 bonspiels and I'd win 6 of them. Yeah. So you'd win half the bonspiels.
When you were 19, 19.
When I was 18, 17 and 18 years old, 18 and 19.
That year you didn't make the team. What was your sense of your own ability at that time? So, like in grade 11, did you still?
We were pretty. We
still said like,
we can beat the crap out of those guys.
You knew you were you playing men's at the Winter Club at that time?
Well, the thing about the men's, the A section men's teams would play the high school teams from the different high schools around the area that were members of the Winter Club. Like, Aberhart they would play the Aberhart teams, or they would play the St. Francis teams or the Churchill teams, so that was good practice for the young guys too. Yeah.
So were you starting to pick up strategy and ideas about the game? Like, how did you?
Yeah, well, that's how we learned. We learned from the men at the club.
How does the team kind of form? Like, how do you figure out? Oh, well, Paul's going to be the skip, and so's going to play this. Like, how does that all start about?
Neil and Glen flipped a coin to play third.
Did they really?
Right, and Glen lost the toss, so he quit.
Really?
Because he didn't want to play second.
And that was in 1975. 75.
So I had to pretty much go and plead with him to play, and
because you got 2 guys that are probably good enough to play third, right?
Yes, and Glen went on to play with Gretzinger, and he's done.
That's fascinating. And so I've noticed that too. I think that's changed a lot today, but for a long time there was an ego in curling where the position kind of like, certain guys could have egos about where they played, right?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, once you start winning cars and money, and you figure out that hey, you're getting 25% of the take, of everything, doesn't matter whether you throw first or last, then you kind of swallow your pride if you're winning.
Okay, so he came around.
Yeah, he came around.
So did you talk him? What happened to that? Was that conversation?
Well, what was good was it was almost a competition between Neil and Glen because I mean it didn't matter who we were playing. Neil wanted to outcurl Glen, and Glen wanted to outcurl Neil.
So they weren't even worried about the other team.
Oh shit, no! They'd curl. One guy would curl like whoever had the worst percentage bought their drinks, right?
Yeah.
So Stearne had to bring his wallet every time.
Yeah. Really? You guys? So that was a regular thing?
Oh yeah, we get somebody to take percentages, and whoever had the worst percentages had to buy the drinks.
So the other guys never figured out if they gave you tougher shots, maybe that would be a little harder on you.
Well, no, they were trying to get good percentages, so I had all the easy shots.
Yeah.
All I did was throw guards and hits.
That probably worked out for you, not buying a lot of rounds.
Yeah, it was. I thought a fairly good move.
Yeah. At what point did you say, "Wow, this is really special. Like we're really good"? Like, at what point did you think we're good outside of the confines of provincial junior curling in Alberta? Was it at the time when you went to nationals and just kind of tested yourself against the rest of the country, or was it even before then?
No, it was before then.
Yeah.
We knew, like, if you don't miss, you're going to win, right? And we were pretty cocky and we were pretty good. We didn't miss very much.
Did you ever surprise yourselves even? Like, or does it?
We practiced a lot. No, we knew what we were doing.
No, but I think what was always amazing about your story and your team is that curling in particular generally didn't have a lot, especially back then, didn't have a lot of great success at a young age, right? I think you were the first team that really kind of came on and had, Bronstein was sort of the story, right? That went back to the
Terry, wasn't he? I think he was an 18-year-old skip in the Briar.
Their lead was 15 when they started that year.
But you got to remember, they were just curling out of Manitoba.
Yeah. Hey, okay, careful. But you guys sort of became then that next real historic team that had, and I mean, not just a little bit of success, right? Just sort of came on the scene. And so you guys were never had any intimidation of other, and maybe you in particular, or did any of the guys ever kind of get nervous? Hey, we're playing Hector Gervais, or we're playing so-and-so. Or
no, we always figured that they had to beat us.
Really? Even in high school?
Oh, or just out of high school, you bet.
What gave you that level of confidence? And were they legal substances?
Well, we got invited. What happened was in 1975, we got invited to, the Grey Cup was in Calgary, and they had a Grey Cup cash spiel at the Calgary Curling Club.
So this is before.
This was in when I was in grade 12.
You hadn't even won the
We'd won the Canadians. We'd won the Canadians, and so we got invited to play in this bonspiel, and it was all the best teams in the country. Barry Fry was at the time, I believe, was the Canadian champion, and
Fry wouldn't have been in it. He was 79, so this would have been a bit earlier, right? That would have been.
Who am I thinking of? Barry.
75 was Tetley was Canadian champion.
Tetley was Canadian champion 75. That's right. So who am I thinking about? Anyway, it had all the best teams in the country were at this bonspiel.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know, it was $10,000 first prize or something like that.
In 1975, which
right. So
a car cost you $2,000, right? Or $2,000 or $3,000.
Well,
Yeah.
so we qualified in that bonspiel. We qualified out of the C event in that bonspiel, and we beat some good teams to get there. And then we lost in the eights after we'd qualified. Yeah. But I mean, right then we knew that we could play with the big boys.
Was that a surprise to a bunch of guys at the time then? Or probably not locally, I'd imagine. They knew you guys were good.
I don't know.
No? It was still...
I don't know.
Yeah.
But after that, it gave us confidence that we could, maybe we weren't afraid to spend a bunch of money to go to some bonspiels and try our luck.
Now, in that bonspiel, you're using push brooms.
Yes.
You are. And nobody else is using push brooms. Or was there actually some?
I don't think anybody else was using push brooms. We were using push brooms for quite a long time before people switched. Probably a couple of years. I think, people started figuring it out.
Were there guys that felt it was like cheating or had like an attitude about it a little bit?
Are you kidding? You're not going to tell a powerhouse corn broom sweeper that he's, they're in a world all their own,
Plus, if you're beating them, I would imagine that.
Yeah, they didn't like getting beat by young guys with long hair very badly. But
did everybody have long hair, or was it?
Oh yeah, well no, everybody except for Neil. Neil didn't have long hair.
And you guys couldn't force him to
his
let
mom
it grow,
wouldn't let him.
Oh, is And so in that Canadians, you were in Edmonton, right? You were saying that first Canadians?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go back to that because there's stories about the Van Winkle.
Oh, shit. We tried and get kicked out. We got kicked out of the van. We invited, what they did up in Edmonton was all the different high schools had, they'd each sponsor a team sort of that was there for the tournament. So they'd, so at the end of the thing, we were at this Bonnie Doon High School in Edmonton, and there was a big reception there with all the teams and all the people from other high schools that were sort of, sponsoring or help or, making these other teams feel at home. And so we invited everybody back to the Van Winkle for the party.
Everybody.
All
inclusive.
So then we took our poor chaperone coach to the liquor store because we weren't old enough to go in there.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Neil was old enough. But anyway, we told Mr. Carr that we needed 20 cases of beer and we needed
This
10,
is a good teacher. Yeah.
and he says, I can't go in there. I can't do that. He says, well, if you may as well just go home then because we're going to go in there anyways because we're throwing a party. So, of course, we got kicked out of the Van Winkle Hotel at about 2 or 3 in the morning that night. Mm-hmm. But all the doors were open and all the other teams were there too, eh?
First question, was it a surprise to get kicked out or how many warnings did you get?
I don't know. I think the police came 2 or 3 times. I can't remember.
So
I can't remember for sure.
It wasn't like they were out to get you. Maybe
I think
had
we
some
were just making a lot of noise.
Okay.
But all the teams, all the doors were open in all the hotel, the whole floor, and it was just a big party.
Yeah. Outside of curling circles, that was normal. I'm assuming you were having a good time. This wasn't something that, out of the ordinary necessarily.
Yeah, we
just on a larger scale, maybe.
Well, we just threw a party.
And
everybody was invited.
Yeah. So again, is that a story that's been probably exaggerated over the years a little bit? I mean, it's not like no one's ever had a party in a hotel and got kicked out. I mean,
it was a fair size party though.
Yeah. like not 20 people.
Like maybe a couple hundred people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just roaming through the hotel.
Yeah, just here and there. And
almost feels like a little at that point, did you feel a little bit like rock stars in a certain way? I mean,
not really, not yet. We were pretty happy. I mean, we just won. We were just
excited, elated.
We're going to Scotland and,
Just a thrill.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, we'll jump ahead. So you since kind of made the Van Winkle a bit of a...
So then we try and... did Neil tell you this? Because we used to try
it's written. It's actually written.
Oh, yeah. Well, then we'd always try and get in there to see if they'd throw us out again.
Yeah.
Because when we'd go to bonspiels in Edmonton, like at the Crestwood Club or the Shamrock for the World Open or whatever, one of those bonspiels, we'd always try and stay in the Van Winkle. And then as soon as they'd figure out who we were, they'd throw us out again.
So you just missed the 40th anniversary. Did you go back to, or is it even? Is the hotel even still there?
I don't know. I don't. I steer clear of Edmonton. If I can.
Yeah. You are legally allowed to enter the city limits, though, right? There's nothing that I.
Yeah. We didn't ever do anything too. We were just having fun. We weren't trying to hurt anybody or wreck anything.
So in playing that Canadians, were you guys pretty dominant, or was there?
Yeah, we lost one game.
Yeah.
And then back then, if you finished in first place, you just played the final. So then we played Manitoba in the final.
Yeah, who'd you play in the?
Quinn.
Yeah.
Jim Quinn.
Mm-hmm. Not a name that then carried on. which happened a lot in the day, right? In juniors, you had guys that just
and then
So at that point, so even in junior circles within, because you know how curling has sort of the established provincial organizations, NACA, these CCAs and all that. Did you guys feel like maybe, did you have the right image that they were hoping for in terms of a winner, or did they?
What do you? I don't think so.
Did you ever sense that there was a bit of a concern?
Sure. Before we went to Scotland, we had to go up to Edmonton and visit with the Alberta Curling Federation.
Back to Edmonton. That's
I know. Back then they had a flight that would go every half an hour from Calgary. It was Pacific Western Airlines would fly up, and so we were getting on the plane to fly up, and it's first come first serve. So the plane was I was last in line. The other three guys got on the plane, and then they stopped. They wouldn't let me on because the plane was full, so I had to come a half hour later. So that didn't go over well with Kinsella, I believe the guy's name was, when their young team that's going over to represent Canada gets off the plane. They're missing the skip because he missed the plane.
So now the answer is, Paul missed the plane. Like it's Paul's fault somehow that he missed the plane.
Yeah, but I was up there half an hour later.
Was there a reason you were later towards the back of the line instead of the front of the line?
Well, we were in the pub waiting for the next plane to go. I don't know. No, just the way it was.
Just the way it happened. But, maybe you got a bit of a bad rap over that.
Well, they were always afraid that, they wanted to make sure that we were representing Canada, and they wanted us to make sure we didn't embarrass the country.
You had this coin flip between the two teachers to see who was going to be your coach / chaperone, right? So that's interesting, right? So they still
was to go to Scotland.
To go to Scotland. So it's still like the coach from the school that goes with you. It's not like they appoint somebody or anything like that.
I don't even know if the coach was there by then coming to that event.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, when they flipped the coin, was it the winner or the
loser
good
that
question.
Had to go? That's a good question.
I'm not sure, right?
Yeah. Well, you got a point there.
Yeah. So at that point, does the CCA decide, we're going to, did they go with you over to Scotland? Because you were in Scotland, right? That first in 76.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they were there or not, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I would have thought they'd had some representative. There was probably did any of the media go?
The
Larry
media
Wood went
there. I think Larry went, and I can't remember for sure who went with the media or who went as a rep for
and
Canada.
All that, yeah.
Because I think Canada would it's overseas one year, and then the following year it's back in Canada. So the representatives that were going to host it the following year would have been there in Aviemore.
Yeah. So in 76, at what point in the season is that? Because I can't remember. Did they play the Worlds kind of late in the year?
They played in March.
So you'd already, at this point, you're defending Canadian champions, or junior Canadian champions. You probably are just playing a lot of men's teams. That's when you started bonspieling a bit, right?
Right. So
and the bonspiels would let you in. They didn't. There was no. You never got any.
Well, because we were the Canadian junior high school champions, we'd get an invite to the bonspiels if we wanted to pay the money to go.
So when did you win the car spiel then? When did that?
77.
Okay, so that wasn't until after. Okay, so we'll get to that. Let's focus on Scotland.
Well, which one? I also won a car spiel here at the Calgary Club.
Okay, I was thinking about
with a different team from BC.
I was thinking about the one where you win the car spiel, and then from what I heard, what Neil explained is you traded the cars in and that's when you got vans, and that was
no.
Maybe
Glen sold his back to the dealer, and then Glen drove Neil's. We'd gone out in Neil's car, so Glen drove Neil's car home. Yeah. Neil drove his new car. I drove my new car, and Kelly flew his brother in because he couldn't drive a stick shift, so he had to fly his brother in to drive
the car that he just won.
Yeah.
Okay, so the vans came later.
Oh, I bought a van.
Separately, okay.
Yeah, Glen bought a van later, and so did I. I traded my car from Vernon from winning the car spiel for a van.
So let's go back to the 76 Worlds, which again, there's stories. Is that the story where you had no shoes, or what was you went into a restaurant with no shoes, or there was some thing about not having a jacket, and there's something. Recall this. Yeah.
In Scotland or in Switzerland?
Or was that Switzerland?
In Switzerland, they wouldn't let me in they wouldn't let me into the thing. Like the guy at the door there, the bouncer at the door, he says this, and he's speaking in Swiss or anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, he says that this party's for curlers, not for hippies. So they weren't going to let the Canadians.
This is in Switzerland.
Yeah. Okay. That was. But I mean, in Scotland. In Scotland, there was a lot of problems with the way we swept because the Scots sweep. They have a lot of, they sweep really fast and back and forth 90 degrees to the path of the rock. And we swept more, we put more weight on it and less movement of the broom. And the Scottish people thought we weren't doing it right. So they were complaining about the Canadians and the way they were sweeping.
And this was like right off the bat.
Right off the bat. And so Chuck Hay who was at the time the only Scotsman that had ever won a world championship, defended us and said, "Look, that's how these kids were learning how to play the game. I mean, they're not doing anything that they haven't been doing for years, and leave them alone."
Did you guys get booed then, or what was it like? Were the fans actually?
There wasn't that many fans.
There wasn't. No,
but there was. No, they wouldn't. But they weren't happy.
Yeah,
we'd get letters saying we should change it, and we're not going to do that.
And did you? So anything else exciting happen over there than that? I'm assuming, is this your first trip to Europe?
Well, I skied over there.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Well, I took my skis and everything because there's a ski hill at Aviemore, but there's no snow. So I mean, there was a few patches of snow, so I made a couple turns and that was it.
Yeah.
Because there's, you don't go to Scotland to go skiing. I learned. So then Glen and I we got on a boat in Southampton, and we went across to the North Spain, and we went up and we went over to the Pyrenees, and we skied in the Pyrenees.
Okay. So this was like, how long did you go for then? I mean, the event was a week.
Because you win the year before, you haven't. So we saved up some money, and we went over for, I think I was gone a month maybe.
You'd never been to Europe at that?
No, that was my first time in Europe, yeah.
So the curling itself was probably minor compared to the rest of the trip. Like when you think back on the memories, I mean, obviously winning was exciting, but just to have a European trip as a young guy like that, it must have been an interesting time in Europe then too? What was it?
Well, there was a train strike in Spain, I believe, so we had to take the train all the way up to Toulouse and Bordeaux and come down to the far coast and come back down to Barcelona and then back in and up into Andorra. We were on the bus for like 30 hours.
This was you and Glen?
Yeah.
Okay. What happened to the other guys at that point?
They went home.
They went home. Yeah. Well, so were you guys close, like all four? Like, what was the relationship then? You've been
Glen
together.
and I were more friends in high school. Like we played on the same team before we made the high school team and that. And Neil and Kelly. Neil lived a lot closer to Kelly over by the high school and that. But no, we were fine. It just,
I always thought that was kind of unique, and it's a shame now the way they do it. Whereas if you win that Canadians, you get that whole year. You're kind of a team together. Like for that whole year, you get a great opportunity to play and play men's and get invited to things. And then now it's just sort of like they win a Canadian and boom, you're off to the. It's like every other event, right? You're off right away to the Worlds.
Yeah, I liked it because I mean when I won with McFarlane and Ferguson, then we same thing. But that time I stayed for 3 months when we went to Switzerland. I went down. Rented a car, went down through Yugoslavia and Dubrovnik, and then got on a bus and went down to Greece, and then went to the Greek islands. And
now at that point, let's not get to 78 yet, but so at that point you've won the World Championship. This has now sort of become like your bonspiel team is still Glen and Neil and Kelly.
Yeah. What happened was they changed the date. Neil and Glen became too old to play in juniors because they changed it to whatever. The CCA makes some decision that they're going to change it from January 1st to July 1st, and Glen's birthday was on June. He got.
But it was literally done that year.
Yeah.
They just sort of started it. Yeah.
Yeah, they started.
You don't think it was targeting you guys directly? Did they look at your birth dates and decide?
Well, and what's funny is they didn't change it to 21 and under like it was in Europe. They changed it. I don't know. They just made some arbitrary decision.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder if they looked at the ages of the Gowsell team and said, well, maybe we should.
Believe me, it crosses your mind.
Did it? Yeah.
It might. So anyway, I had to get a new team, right?
And then, but you're still bondspieling with these guys.
We're still bondspieling with Glen and Neil.
And so at that point,
and Kelly.
You're done grade 12, though, right, at this point?
Right.
So coming right out of high school, are you really focused on curling? Hey, we're good at this.
I thought I was going to make a living at it. When I was 19 years old, I had $19,000 in the bank, and you could buy a new house in Calgary for about $35,000.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Back then. Yeah, but I mean, I wasn't. My father says, "Paul, you should buy a house." I said, "Dad, I'd like to buy a house, but I need a new van. I need a new stereo, and I'm going to Europe." So I spent it.
Now in the Calgary market, I mean, it's taking a little dive, but I don't think we want to discuss what the value of that property might be. No,
that's right. Yeah. You can't fill that was probably not the wisest move.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We can all look back and say we didn't always make the wisest moves, right?
But that's right.
So you're travel, so did you just play in everything you could? Like went anywhere you could, or
we'd play
every weekend.
Played about 12 bonspiels
over that span of the
that was before Christmas usually. You'd start in September and then you'd be done by.
Was anyone else playing that? Like that's a lot.
Everybody did.
And everybody played as much as they could. Yeah.
Depending on where you were. I mean, I'd play in bonspiels all the way from from the West Coast to the East Coast. I mean, the only place I didn't go and play was down in Southern Ontario because they didn't have any money down there. Like, top prize in Toronto was $5,000. Well, we weren't going to go all the way to Toronto to play for $5,000.
And then you guys, the stories I heard too a little bit were when you guys would play, you guys would get the fans. People would watch you guys. Oh, yeah. So why was that? What do you think made you guys so, I don't know, just, did you stand out a little?
Maybe it was our... Maybe.
I mean, you were good. I mean, clearly, and it was probably exciting to watch a young team that's beating all these old.
Oh, sure. I mean,
guys,
we could beat up on everybody.
Yeah. So, what kind of style were you playing then at that point? Were you very aggressive against these guys?
Well, I mean, I kind of would know what they were good at and what they weren't good at. Most corn broom guys in the day were all out-turn throwers, so we'd play all interns. Against the out-turn teams.
Okay. And you'd know who those teams were.
Sure.
So why, what was it? What was it about the out-turn that you
Well, an out-turn, when you throw an out-turn, you set the rock. And when you have straw on the ice or corn on the ice, you throw the rock differently. When you throw with corn on the ice, you throw it to be there, and then you sweep it to according to how much you want it to slow down. Yeah. Whereas with push brooms, you want to just keep the rock moving, like you want to keep the speed of the rock. I mean, it's a different game. Yeah. When you play with corn brooms, you're out, you throw it out and there. Mm-hmm. When you throw it with push brooms, these days, even with our push brooms, when we're playing a corn broom team, you had to be out and there.
Because you're still playing in the conditions
you're still playing on the mulch.
I would imagine you guys understood the mulch well, and that made you successful and understand how to
because we only played against corn broom teams.
Yeah. And they only played against push broom teams once when they played you. So
that's right.
They couldn't adapt, whereas everybody you played was.
Well, when you think about it, I mean, a corn broom when a corn broom swings, it's up in the air half the time, and it's on the ice half the time. So there's going to be if you get down low and look, there's a gap.
Yeah, as you're
sweeping. Yeah. Well, we could sweep the whole sheet of ice. They could only sweep 2/3 or half of it.
So it sounds like it was a real advantage. Like, did you guys know that was an advantage, understanding it, using it?
Yes, because I could keep that chaff out of the corn chaff out of the way of the front of my rock full time if I wanted to.
And there was no way they could. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And there was no way they could counter the brush because there's nothing they could do to try to manipulate what you were doing. Yeah.
No. Plus we could sweep on the corners of the rocks to get it to curl, and they couldn't.
Well, yeah. At that point so you guys understood at the time that you could use corner techniques or things like there were things you could do. And was that stuff at the time? Because was there anything in the Canadian rules?
But everybody knew that.
Was there anything in the Canadian rules that were kind of written towards it?
Well, the Canadian rules would say you have to sweep across the path. Well, I mean, they changed the rules 3 or 4 times.
They've done it a bunch, and now there's very little rules. Yeah,
they changed the rules. You know, I mean, you had to sweep 90 degrees to the path of the stone. Well, you can't sweep 90 degrees. What if you're at 87 degrees?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or it becomes difficult to try
and you can't, and they called it snow plowing. Well, you have to move the broom head. Well, your heartbeat's going to make the broom head move a little bit, or you've got to. The fact is they couldn't really. They didn't define it very well. Mm-hmm. So I mean, and for me as the skip, I just wanted to make sure it didn't crap up before we could guide it to where it had to go. By getting off of it, letting it crap up a little bit, just like the corn broom guys. They would sweep and they'd get off it for a second, let it junk, and then they'd get back on it.
Yeah.
And then we did the same thing.
Just a little more control.
A lot of people thought we were dumping in front of the rock. Well, we didn't dump it. If you pick your broom straight up, the rock stops.
Well, this is the thing I would have thought with all the chaff, you don't have to.
No, you use it to your advantage.
You're using the other teams, what they've done.
To your advantage. So you always came off like this.
Yeah.
And then clean, and then you always came off like this. If you went like this, the rock, you'd lose the rock.
You actually didn't want it. You didn't want to lift it straight up. That was actually dangerous.
It was.
So at that time, you're traveling across country. So that particular season, probably that after being Canadian champion, before you win the next Canadians. So with that tournament team, or I call it bonspiel team, when you went across country, what was the camaraderie like, or like in terms of the other players, the other teams, like what was it like? Because I think you guys there's some stories, and again, you can verify what they're about. Partying in Manitoba, or meeting some of the other younger guys. All good experiences, or every bad experiences that you had?
All good. Curlers are good people. I mean, nobody likes getting beat. When you're playing in those things, you're taking time away from work, and you're putting money on the line. We didn't have sponsorships back then, or
so you guys had nothing.
No, you paid for everything yourself. So I mean, everybody was. When you lost, you lost money and you lost time away from
whatever else you were
your home and your work, or that you could have been doing. So I mean, it was competitive. You bet.
I guess part of the thing is, the perception is you guys especially coming out of kind of that, curling had a stigma, I think probably, prior to your era of being kind of a little more conservative, a little older, right? And I don't think it was, but I think that's a perception. Then you guys became sort of this young, long-haired team somehow. You're dramatically different. But did you really find that from a personality, when you sat down and had beers with all the guys, like, did you feel different? Did it seem very comfortable? Yeah.
I mean, everybody went to which they don't have now, everybody went to the hospitality room after the game or in the evenings, for a beer or two. And you'd shoot the breeze with whoever you played against, or you get to know people because you travel to the same spiels all around the country. Like, of course, maybe some of the BC guys would stay more in British Columbia, and maybe the Manitoba guys would kind of stay more.
But you saw
we'd go right across. We'd go over we'd go to the biggest ones.
Where the Bucks were.
Yeah, we'd go where the Bucks were.
So you're traveling across country, and my understanding is you did have some run-ins with the authorities, or there were police.
Well, the police would pull us over just about every trip because of
what? Were they looking out for you guys, or?
Well, I had a license plate cover that said beer drinkers make better lovers, and I couldn't figure out why the cops kept pulling us over. Yeah. And the fact I had a big beard and long hair.
But they didn't know curling. Did they know curling? Like, did you ever get stopped and they go, "Oh, you're Paul Gowsell.
No.
You're on your way"?
No, they got stopped and they told us to get out of the vehicle.
Yeah. So were there a few like tense moments at times then when you guys actually had run-ins?
Yeah, they'd wander around looking for whatever they were looking to find, and whether it was beer or whatever.
Whatever. Did you guys ever spend any like nights where they threw you in jail or anything crazy like that, or did they?
No,
nothing. Okay, so you never had any of those like Rolling Stones experiences to that level, but
no.
Yeah. This is small town. This could be small. Like, this is in the major centers, or this is small town all over Canada. Sometimes that you'd.
Well, I mean, no, we never got thrown in jail.
Not that you. Yeah.
No.
That never happened. There was never a night spent there.
No, not on our curling tours, anyways.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to cover. I want to cover what the vehicle make, model, the year.
70. I think it was a 72 Dodge short box van.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, the old shag rug on the walls and the roof and the floor and the
color shag. Do you even
blue? Oh yeah. All we needed was the lava lamp and the black.
So there was no lava lamp.
No. But it had the cooler under the floor that could hold 3 cases of beer on ice.
Yeah.
And so that it was never found by anybody that ever pulled us over. Mm-hmm. So we managed to get away with that.
Yeah. Who designed that? Was that actually?
I bought it off of Dale Fox's brother.
So it was already there. So
I bought it like that.
Trap door was already.
Yeah,
there.
It was. Yeah.
All right. So you could claim, hey, this wasn't our idea. It just happened to be in the vehicle.
And those aren't our beers.
Well, I mean, if they ever do build a curling Hall of Fame, I think that van should probably be in it. That would be something. So you guys, you made, how much do you recall? You're keeping track of the income at some point, like, because so this was your income at that point, right? Yeah. You were, mind you probably didn't have a lot of high expenses. Right, as a young guy, you were.
No, I didn't have a mortgage or a family or anything like that back then. I mean, you kind of lived from one spiel to the next. So, I mean.
And I heard you didn't eat very much, so maybe that, like, you didn't need to spend money on food, or what? Is that, how much of that is kind of true or not?
It is. It's quite true. I don't eat very much.
Yeah. Was it?
I get all wound up.
Even today?
Even when I go spieling today, yeah.
So what did you find? Like, did you just, when you would play, like, how would you approach a game? Would you get a lot of butterflies? Would you get very.
No. We were
that, yeah. Because I
didn't worry about that.
Confident.
We were confident. We were a good team.
So you just didn't need to eat?
No, I don't know. Just my nerves.
So you understood your nerves. So you had nerves. I think everybody does. I've talked to lots of guys that say, like, it doesn't really matter. Everybody feels it, right? When you're trying to make the last shot or something, but you just kind of understood it. Clearly knew how to manage it because you were very successful, right? And you guys won.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. No, but like,
so, like, when you finished a bonspiel, let's say you came home for a little downtime, maybe there's a couple weeks off. What did you find? Like,
I'd get back to normal, and then it would happen all over again.
When did that start? Like, before, when you got there, or did, like, even the first game in that bonspiel? What would?
I don't know. It is what it is.
So was it like
there was a lot of this? Hey?
Yeah. Some drinking and everything else.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just.
But that's a way. But maybe that's just a way to self-medicate the anxiety.
We'd come off the ice, everybody would be hungry. They'd all go get something to eat, and I would just go get a beer.
Yeah.
And then at 2 or 3 in the morning, I'd be wandering around Winnipeg or Saskatoon or something, looking for a country kitchen for a grilled cheese sandwich and a bowl of soup.
So you did eat, is what I'm saying.
I did a little bit.
What I'm saying is you just ate when everybody else was maybe sleeping or still at the party.
Yeah, probably.
Because I do think at some point a medical examiner would have had to come to just make sure that you were okay. Was there ever a point where you were like,
no,
you never became like a little, you always had the energy?
Yeah.
Were you always kind of a high energy guy? Like, was that?
I'd say so.
Yeah. So were you guys as a team too? Were you kind of vocal amongst each other? Were you very kind of sense sometimes that like did you guys always agree on everything? I guess that's the first question on the ice, or did you sometimes disagree?
No, it was, I bet you 98% of the time I just call a game, everybody's happy. But if somebody saw something I missed, that was okay. A lot of times I'm playing the other team's weaknesses. I didn't think our team had any. I thought we could throw either turn, we could throw draws, we could throw hits. So, I mean, I would always just try and throw to the other team's weaknesses if I could.
Did you guys all kind of throw the same for the most part?
Yeah, we used to try and throw the same number at turns.
And attempted to do that. I know some teams, right, would just adjust the broom for the player.
Yeah, there's guys that, we practice throwing the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's another thing. I mean, I think there was probably a perception you guys were just naturally talented, were on the scene. Did you guys like really worked at the game and practiced at it?
Yeah, we did. We practiced quite a bit.
Do you think like more than other teams maybe did at that time?
But we played a lot. I mean, we were, like when you think about it, we come out of the C event every time. Like we'd lose the first two, we'd get 8 or 10 games every weekend. We'd play the maximum amount of games you could play. Then you come home and you're playing in a Super League on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night. Then you got another game on and then you're back on the road on Thursday to get to wherever you're going for the Calcutta on Thursday night, and you're back at it again. Like there was we played 200 and some odd games a year.
That's a lot of games.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as we practice at the beginning of the year a little bit, but after a while, it's you're just playing.
Did you ever run any gamesmanship?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Like other teams.
There was an outstanding gamesmanship.
I like how you call it outstanding.
Well, because it was fun. Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, the first time you heard it, when you got, when you're up in Edmonton playing a team of great big guys and the skip's standing behind you and you're at the tee head and he's going, if you hippie punks beat us, we're going to break your legs in the parking lot after the game. You know that. Right?
And who was that?
Well, I can't say.
You can't say. Not Hector.
No, it wasn't Hector.
No, he wouldn't say something.
No, not Hector.
Yeah. Although he was probably an intimidating physically. He probably.
Oh, Hector would yell at his guys.
Yeah. He was more intimidating to his own team.
Well, it was. And Hector wouldn't even let the rock go. The guys would start sweeping it before he'd even let it go. They'd sweep it coast to coast. Yeah. It would come up 6 inches short, and Hector would be all over him. Come on, you guys, you got to sweep better than that.
Yeah. So you must have found, especially being a young team, you're out there beating guys. Were there a bunch of guys that would try to do little things and?
Oh yeah, I mean that goes on all the time.
Did they try to intimidate you?
I don't think it goes on anymore. You don't see it as much on TV now because these guys are all mic'd up. But I mean, back in the day, you always did a lot of chirping.
So it was like trash talk.
Sure.
It was like being in an NBA game.
Maybe not.
Almost,
it wasn't trash talk. It was like, holy crap! Did you ever turn the shit out of that one? You know what I mean? Like, you kind of make them think about it. Well, did he, or ask him, how's your wrist? Did you hurt yourself on that shot?
Just a little. So, did you ever play those games, Paul? Or
sure.
Yeah, it's fun. It sounds like you found it fun. That was appealing about the game, probably, right?
These part of the game. Sure, there's gamesmanship. You bet.
Ever close to fisticuffs? Like, was there a point where? No, there was never a back alley conversation.
I don't think so.
Not that you were.
I wasn't going to hit anybody. Yeah. That's for sure.
You guys right away found so you weren't afraid of anybody.
No.
Right from the get go.
That's right.
Where does that come from? Because I don't think every person you see in sport at that age, at a young age like you were, has that. Did it come from somewhere, or was it just a? Well,
I mean, at the end of the day, it's when you think about it, I mean, it's 4 guys against 4 guys, and the guys that make the most shots are going to win.
Well, no, but other people at 17 and 16 would think it's 4 men against 4 junior curlers, and it sounds like you never entered your mind.
No, didn't.
Yeah. But I do wonder, did that just come from somewhere, or just talking to you? It just seems like you don't seem to fathom that there's another way to view it.
Not really. Yeah. No. I mean, if you're competitive and you're out there, you get your money on the line and you're going to go play, and you think that you've, put your time in, and why shouldn't you beat the other guys?
Did you recognize that was unique?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. To me, that's the way you should approach things. You never should play scared. You should go out there and kick the crap out of it. See if they can beat you.
Yeah. Which I'm sure back in that area, and even today, you get, young teams are going to go into a game like that going, oh, okay, well, we hope we do all right, and we're going to try, and they might adjust their game so that they can keep it close or maybe try to not lose it. And I get the sense when you went in, you're looking, here you are, a 17, 18-year-old, and you're looking for the weaknesses in these other guys, who've won the Brier and won championships, and you're saying, I'm going to look for weaknesses in their game because we don't have weaknesses.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and really, I mean, there was a lot of interns.
Yeah.
Lot of. Yeah. I mean, I don't. People probably don't even realize. I think they realize.
At some point, did they start to figure out
the good corn room teams would get pissed off because they were playing interns every end.
So what you're saying, there was never a corner guard on the other side of the sheet. It was always going to be.
Oh no, there would be. I mean, you'd still play the game the same way to get three. You'd still need two corner guards to try and score your three. But we'd always start with interns.
Huh. But did teams start to realize that at some point?
Yeah, but what are they going to do about it?
Because you can't. Yeah, they can't.
They better go practice their interns.
Exactly. So you go to. So you win it. Where did you win the Canadian Nationals in the next?
Winnipeg.
Okay, Winnipeg. And so at this point, you kind of have two teams because you got your bonspiel team.
Yeah.
And you're playing with. So at this point now, you've got John Ferguson and
Doug McFarlane,
and then Kelly's still with you. Yeah. So it's a new team. But was there any? It was just curling.
Well, those guys were corn broom sweepers. They had to learn how to sweep with push brooms.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, we had to go at the beginning of the year. Start learning, teaching those guys how to use a push broom.
Now at this point, it's no longer a high school team, right? At this point, this is when you're allowed to not be in high school.
At this point, it is a junior team.
Junior team. So you don't have to be with guys from your high school, because you're not even in high school at this point.
Right.
So that was the point when they had made that. So you were able to take your...
Well, you see, John was the skip of Crescent Heights, one of the other high schools in town.
Yeah, and you'd grown up playing, you'd seen him.
So I'd seen him and know him, and, know.
So how'd that team get formed then? What was it?
I asked them if they wanted to play, because I lost two of my players, and they said
sure.
So
John and...
Doug said sure.
And they were playing together at the time. Yeah.
I'm not sure if they were. I think maybe they were.
Yeah. Okay. So how much did that team get to play together then, or were you still...
Not that much. I think we went to one or two little spiels before we went to
provincials,
just till we played it. Yeah, till we tried it.
But they were good players too.
Oh yeah, they're good players. They don't.
Clearly, at that point, you had the ability to find the best players, and they were going to play with you.
Yeah, I mean it helps.
Now, were they all long haired?
Well, I mean, not as long as mine. Yeah. But they had longer hair than they have now. That's for sure.
I think everybody does.
Well, everybody
has shorter hair now. So you go into Canadians that year, and that was in
Transcona in Winnipeg.
Okay, don't badmouth Manitoba again.
Well, I liked Manitoba. I used to go to the PWA bonspiel, the Granite Curling Club.
Yeah. So at that point, you're really a men's caliber team playing against the Canadian juniors. Was there a risk that maybe you kind of took it for granted that this was going to be easy, or did you guys that never happened? Never.
Well, I mean, we didn't. We just. Yeah, we didn't consider that. We were just a team.
Did you have any close games in that?
Well, sure.
Yeah, so it was, There must have been also everybody who's gunning for you, I'm sure, right?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. So then you win again. So at this point, is the CCA rolling their eyes going, oh, okay, now we got to take Gowsell to Europe again, or was it?
Maybe. I don't know. It's the CCA. It was funny. The CCA said that to me, or was it the CCA or was it the CBC? CBC used to have the CBC Curling Classic. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I always wanted to play in that. You see it on TV and you think, geez, that'd be fun. Look at all the money they were making, because that was a big thing. So they and
it was invite, right? You had to be invited.
You had to be invited. So we were now a two-time Canadian or world champ. So they told my team that went to Switzerland that if you guys... And that was on probably 2 weeks after the competition in Grindelwald. Yeah. And I said, well, that's great. But I've saved...
So they said, if you go to
if you win this, we're going to invite you to the CBC Curling Classic. So I go over there and I said to him, well, look at it. I've been saving for the whole year. I saved a bunch of money and I've got this vacation planned. Mm-hmm. So if you guys will fly us out of wherever in Europe... It was in Halifax at the time, was where they were playing it. We'll just fly in. Two of the guys went back to Calgary, John and Doug went back to Calgary, and Kelly and I went to Greece. So we just said, well, wherever we are, we'll fly back for it. So we called them up, and they changed their mind, and they flew in the Swiss ladies team instead.
What?
Yeah.
Because that...
I don't know what.
Yeah.
But they didn't tell John and
who'd gone back.
Who'd gone back, and
who could have just stayed. They could have gone to Greece. They could have.
Well, no, they weren't planning to do that anyway. But they didn't know the whole story, and they were wondering why. They said they would fly me in, but not Kelly. It was just a weird scenario. Yeah. But yet they can fly in the Swiss ladies team for this thing. So that's what they did, eh? So I was not happy about that. So I told, there was a Larry Kimber and a Larry Brown that were working for the CBC at the time. Yeah. And they weren't budging. They said, too bad for you. And I said, well, you guys are never going to make any money televising me on a curling ice. Yeah. It isn't happening. Mm-hmm. You guys, I wasn't happy about that. So you should have seen the looks on their faces when we were standing in the tunnel at the 1980 Brier with our CTV, the one to watch T-shirts on, just before they're ready to send us out onto the ice.
And did that get on the air?
No. We put our sweaters on over top, but boy, these guys they didn't know whether to shit or wind their watch.
Did everyone in the event see the shirts?
People all downstairs they didn't know what they were going to do.
Did people understand the background or no? Because that's 2 years later, but...
I know, but I said I was not happy.
Oh, and understandably.
Because, you win that, you win a lot of money.
Not even that.
And that's what it was all about, money.
But not only that, they're telling you you're going to, be
they backed out of the deal.
And they backed out of the deal. Was there anything particular that happened at that Worlds? Like that Worlds was fairly, I think compared to Scotland, right? Isn't that the one there was a lot less the sweeping controversy was pretty much done?
Well, everybody's starting to use push brooms by
using them the same way. And
some are. The Scots were always using push brooms. The Swedes and the Norwegians, I think, were still using corn brooms, if I remember correctly.
So no other incidents at that Worlds that you can remember where there was no sweeping controversy, no other controversies or things?
No, that went fairly smoothly.
Yeah. And then, so at this point, because you'd had so much success in men's, you had to appreciate that experience. But was part of you almost think, because you just talked about, money's important, we all also kind of maybe thinking, gee, was there a bonspiel I could have been in with my other team during this event? Or was that never?
No. We had planned on traveling.
Yeah.
And then if we went back for that 1 week back to Halifax to curl in that competition, we would. And then we would fly back to Europe and continue with our 3-month vacation.
Yeah. So that's it. Yeah.
Anyways. So that was, when I got back, I had to explain to John and Doug what had happened because they got the wrong. They were told that we didn't want to come back, or
really. So they were told different story.
Yes.
So that's even worse. Now they're creating false information that's between the team members.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty.
And that was the CBC. That's not the CCA.
No, that was the CBC. The CCA. I don't know. They change the rules all the time.
Well, what's fascinating about this is, so you were a team the fans loved, right? You guys got. Everybody loves a young, different, exciting team that's winning. It's in every sport. It's universal. But for some reason, and I don't think curling's unique, the old guard doesn't even recognize or accept what they have. So to think about it, they should want you on the CBC.
Yeah, they're not that smart.
But they don't get
No, nobody said they were the brightest bulbs on the tree. But that's, that's the decision they made. Yeah, I was choked. But anyways, that's the way it goes.
So at that point now, you're out of juniors, moved on from there. So you're heading into the next season is back to the original team.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's in 79, yeah. So we played 2 more years.
Yeah.
And then together, and then Neil went, and Neil and John, my 2/3, went with Ed.
Yeah, eventually, yeah. But I don't want to get to that. Was that you guys are still making money? You're still finding success?
Yeah.
Yeah. But did these guys all have the same drive that you had to say, hey, I think professional curling is there's a potential for this. Like I want to curl as much as I can, and I want to play as much as I can, and win as much as I can. Or did you sense that they had the same drive for that? Or
I think so. I don't. Yeah,
because it's hard. Curling's not that sport. It's not like you come out playing football for Alabama and then you get $1 million contract. The economics of curling do not match.
No.
So you were certainly at a time, I think, where curling had it was interesting because I think the 70s and particularly late 70s had a lot of curling was at a boom time, and I think a lot of people don't recognize it, that it was really big at that point.
Oh, it was. I mean, you'd go to places like, you'd go into these small towns in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and half the town would be at the curling club.
Okay, so one bonspiel in Saskatchewan. Let's jump to that for one, because I want to get clarification on stories that people hear.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, something about a pizza.
If I can remember.
The story about a pizza. Okay.
All right.
Neil told me a version of it. Again, it's one of those ones where I think the story gets bigger and bigger as it's told.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think we were at the Regina Curling Club. We were playing in Regina. And what happened was we lost the semi-final of the bonspiel. And this was in the afternoon. We lost the semi-final at about, I don't know. So back then, they had a semi-final playoff for a couple $100.
Like a bronze medal.
Yeah,
almost.
for a ham sandwich. You know what I mean?
And nobody wants to play
Nobody wants to play it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is they want you to go out early because they want the final to finish. They want two games being played.
But they'll overlap a little.
They want the final to start maybe two ends later so that the final will take front and center, at the end of the evening. Well, by doing that, after we had lost the semifinal, when we come off the ice, all the people that were in the stands, and there's probably 1,500 of them, but many of them were all lined up to buy food, and there's no food. Like, we could get in line, but we had to go up in 20 minutes and play, start early, than the final. So I just ordered pizza. I just said, bring it to sheet 3 at the Regina Curling Club. So at about the fourth end or so, out comes the kid with the paper hat on crooked, in the pizza boxes, and he walks out there, and I ordered a couple of extra large specials, and then I told Larry McGrath, who we were curling against, just help yourself. Because both of our teams hadn't eaten anything all. Yeah. And that's what got that thing started in the first place.
There's nothing.
It wasn't to try and be smart or anything,
or create a
smart ass.
No, it was literally, we don't have any time to eat,
and we can't. And there's everybody else's. It was just
although most of the pizza was probably for the other guys, because as you mentioned, you didn't eat very much. Or there maybe at this point.
Well, I mean, my guys needed food, and so did the other guys. So, and then right to this day, Larry McGrath still claims his last rock caught a mushroom.
Yeah. A mushroom. Okay, so I heard olive. So now it's already changed. Did it really?
Well, I think it's sour grapes because he lost.
Because I don't really see how it would be possible that actual vegetable particles would land on the ice. It just seems...
Well, if you're eating pizza and a mushroom falls off the pizza, lands on your sweater, and then you're over the rock sweeping...
Okay, true. Could happen. So we'll leave it at that.
I don't know. I think Larry's just trying to be funny. And if you look now, they don't have those semifinals anymore because guys were just splitting it anyway. They would split the difference, and then they go out and throw takeout shots for 6 ends or 8 ends. And
there was other splitting a lot in the day too, right? But in the finals, did that happen? Like say first place was too much and second wasn't enough. Did you guys kind of say, look, like we've all been here all weekend?
Well, I think I'm thinking sometimes they would, but usually we didn't do that because we wanted it all. We were greedy.
Yeah, and you felt confident.
Yeah.
So at this point, is the team starting to wear down a little bit? Like, you guys have been together a lot of time.
Well, those guys probably, I think, just got tired of me yelling at them all the time.
Did you yell at them a lot?
Well, sure.
So, you went back, you told the story about Hector. So did you go, I think Hector's got the right idea? Or what was...
No. He's just,
what did you find?
I'm just a perfectionist.
Were you? Yeah. Yeah. So that was part of it?
So guys are just... and plus we've been together now for, since 1975. So now it's 8, we've been 5 years and, it's just.
You probably start to know each other better than the girlfriends do and everything else. It's like.
Yeah. So these guys had other options, so they took them.
And then but now that 80 Briar though, 1980, and that was in.
Calgary.
In Calgary, right? So it's in home, right? Like here.
That was a hard Briar because they wanted you, because you're the host, they want you to be, at all the functions as the host team. So that was a marathon.
So it might have actually been better off for you guys if it had been.
We usually played better on the road when we were in somewhere else, because everybody wanted your time there.
And you guys played well.
Oh yeah. I mean, we did. We were in first place right up to the last day, and then we lost 2 games on the last day to drop from first to third.
I don't think people remember that. So you lost. So the first game was to.
Well, we lost to Ursel from Quebec, and we lost to. I don't even remember. Somebody. Peter Hope from Nova Scotia.
Oh, okay. So a game that
we never should have lost it, but we ran. I think we kind of ran out of gas. But anyway, we were in the semifinal against Hackner.
Gas because, like you say, just the whole week.
It was a long week, yeah. Because we'd played Folk in the round robin and smoked them, eh?
Yeah.
Because they were a corn broom team, and Hackner had just switched to brushes. But Hackner didn't know how to use his brushes against corn broom teams yet.
So they hadn't figured out, even though they were using them, they didn't know all the...
Yeah, they didn't know all the... Yeah, so they got beaten 6 ends by Folk in the final.
Yeah. Did you guys, like at that Briar, then how many teams were using push? Was it...
Oh, and that, I don't know.
Quite a few at that point, or was it actually
I can't remember, to be honest with you, how many exactly were, but there was still maybe half and half. I don't even know.
Folk is still the last team to win, right, with corn.
Yeah.
And I assume will be. I don't know if it's going to make a comeback.
No, it won't.
So. But as a team, were you guys still like pretty solid as a team? Guys are getting along. That
Briar
I mean, it was your first Briar. It's a Purple Heart. It must have been a great feeling. And
yeah, it was good. I mean, you don't win them all. You know, it's another bonspiel.
And you guys, I mean, leaving it, you must have felt. Well, in particular, so that game against Hackner, going into it, you probably felt very confident.
Oh, sure.
It was a close.
But we knew that we would have more trouble with Hackner than with Folk because we hadn't. Yeah. Well, we'd never lost. I think I'd lost one game to Folk in my life because he's a corn broom team and we beat him all the time. We'd beat him in the finals in his home club in Saskatoon at the Nutana, and then we'd have a party in his second man's house, and his second man wouldn't even come to his own house for the party.
Sorry, the second man wouldn't come to his own house.
Yeah,
because he was upset.
Yeah,
or just because they didn't like losing.
Well, we'd crash in Thompson's. He had a big house, so we'd crash at his house during the week.
During the whole week. And
then at the end, after
I'm assuming you're invited.
And then at the end, after we'd won, we'd invite everybody back to the party at his place, and he wouldn't show up.
Really?
Well, because he's not happy.
Little unhappy. Okay. Well, hey, everybody's competitive, and they deal with that a different. Everybody deals with it a certain way. So did you guys know Hackner much at that time? Had you played him a few times?
I think that's the first time I met him.
Oh, at the Briar.
Or maybe I played him in Winnipeg a few times. I met him in Winnipeg, I think, a few times.
He's a guy that also enjoys the social aspect of the game.
Oh, absolutely. He's an amazing man.
And you guys got along?
Oh, sure.
I would think so. He's and a thinker through the game. Well, it was interesting how you say they hadn't really figured it out yet.
No, not yet. But, I mean, they did after a while. Then everybody was switching to brushes after that anyways.
Yeah. So now the advantage is limited because it's not about dealing with chaff anymore. There's no more chaff to deal with on the ice.
Right. I mean, it became an ice maker's nightmare is what happened.
Yeah.
Because you could play on not very good ice, and if there was corn all over the ice, you didn't know. It curled both ways.
Now everybody realized, wow, these guys don't know what they're doing.
Oh, this rock curls a half an inch more than that rock.
Well, the other thing is, how much did people actually notice the difference between rocks as well, right?
Well, you wouldn't.
It was just less often.
Unless the rock was blatantly a peg or a cutter or but usually no, because of there would be chaff all over the ice. I really felt sorry for the ice makers. I mean, you got guys that are making not very much money working on, and all of a sudden every little detail of their ice is front and center, whereas before they could just flood it, throw some pebble on it, and go home.
So when you left that Briar, I'm sure. I mean, disappointment. I'm sure, but at your age, you guys probably all felt like
next year.
But
then after that, then the team broke up, eh?
Was that hard, that like the breakup?
Well, I couldn't really figure it out. I was a bit choked at first because I thought, why would you want to, if we're successful, why would you want to follow it up?
And you were still successful right up to the point where...
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were still winning lots and lots, right? So, But anyway, that happened. So then I started playing with some guys from BC. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the end of playdowns because back then you didn't represent BC if you lived in Alberta.
Yeah. So you're playing with those guys. There's no... So did you have a few years there where you didn't even play to go to the Briar?
Well, I would go, but I would just play with local guys.
Locally, yeah. So you just pick up, and that's not a team.
You pick up a team, but you might get out of the South and get you might get to the province.
And you hadn't played together.
No, right? So and then the guys that I started playing with in BC, we would win bonspiels too. Eh? We won a bunch.
Who were you playing with in BC at the time? Like?
Ron Thompson, who used to play with Jim Armstrong, Terry Owen, and Jim Heinz.
Yeah.
And these guys were corn broom sweepers again.
Yeah.
So we'd put the corn on the ice, and then we'd throw we'd play come around, we'd play junk.
Uh-huh.
with the corn. We'd get a 3-point lead. We'd throw the corn brooms in the corner and throw.
And you pull out the push brooms.
And then just throw heaters.
You'd switch brooms, right?
Yeah.
Because now, were a lot of teams doing that yet at that point? They'd either kind of say,
Not
hey,
yet.
we're playing with this broom or that. So you were sort of a trendsetter going, hey, wait, the rules allow us to use both. Let's, based on the score of the game or what's happening.
Well, because a lot of these guys that were playing with corn brooms, they understood how the corn broom worked, but they didn't understand how to use a push broom against it. So, I mean, I was going to use that as long as I could.
And if they weren't going to use corn, well, why don't we use the corn to start the game?
Exactly.
And then take advantage of the conditions because we actually understand it.
That's right.
Yeah. You know how they play with hickory golf clubs? It'd be interesting if they had an old corn broom bonspiel now. And what would happen?
Oh, you'd have heart attacks left, right, and center. Like, think of it now. They play 8 ends and they're exhausted with a push broom.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Okay, this is coming from a skip.
Well,
fair
enough.
Let's be fair.
Yeah, I guess.
Did you ever not skip? Like, was it always?
I played with Harold for years too, with Breckenridge for years.
Yeah.
And we won a bunch of bonspiels also.
Did you like the last rock though? Or did
I
you
liked playing third for Harold. It was fun.
Yeah.
Getting a little more exercise, but then, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I think I don't know what I prefer. If the guy's good enough to throw the last ones and he's not going to miss much, then I'll play for him.
You played some seniors, right? And had
we lost the
runs,
semifinal last year to Lukowicz.
Yeah.
Well, to Jim Walsh. Yeah. Anyways, that happens.
So, what's your thoughts on curling? Like where it's got to?
I think it's kind of a shame that the Olympics ruined curling.
Yeah. In what way? What do you?
Well, everybody's into now. Instead of going upstairs and having a beer with the other guys, they go to the gym. Like that's just not that's not for me. I mean, that's not what it was about for me.
Yeah.
It was, you've got, you've got umpires. And one of the things that really turned me on to curling originally was that it was governed by the players.
Yeah.
If you played for a skip and you signed on with him, you'd go to a bonspiel and you'd play. And if you didn't want to play with him anymore at the end of the bonspiel, then you didn't. But you still shook hands before the game. You shook hands after the game, and the two skips would decide. Like if somebody was sliding over the hog line, you'd say to the other skip, your second man, it looks like he's sliding over the hog line. Maybe could you have a word with him? And they'd go, sure, I'll do that. And that was the end of it. And if you burned a rock, you kicked it off. You didn't try and pretend you didn't see anything. Mm-hmm. It really was a gentleman's sport. And that's what
even the gamesmanship, like you say, was part of it that was expected, and it was actually is appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the game, but there was no malice involved in it. It was interesting part of the game. I mean, but now it's all coaching and, your nutritionist and your videographer and your your travel coordinator and your,
Well, some would say that it's a sport that grows up, right? Or I don't know.
I guess they needed that in order for it to become an Olympic sport. You have to have coaches, I guess, or
or the image, the perception has to change, and all those things. But I think there's a character to the game then that starts to erode. Right? That's the reason people love it in the first place. It's a game of community.
I mean, Warren Hansen wanted this thing to become an Olympic sport. And you know what? I mean, he had good intentions, but I don't think he really thought it through very much.
Well, and others. I think a lot of others wanted it to be Olympic sport.
Well, I mean, if it's an Olympic sport, again, Olympics is one event every 4 years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of onus on one event every 4 years.
Everything else.
And it changes everything else.
Yeah. So I'm always mixed about it. I mean, I see.
Well, I mean, I love it that it brought all these other countries. It introduced all these other countries,
and maybe we'll see it more growth because a lot of those countries don't actually have that much curling, right?
But unlike Canada, those other countries, it's more of an elitist sport in those countries. You might only have 1,000 curlers in Norway
and was it like that at the time when you went over there in juniors? Like it was.
Oh, these countries, they focus on one team, like the Chinese and the Russians and that. They focus on one team, and they take a pile of money and they set that team up to go. And they were even doing it in Norway. Like Eigel and Christian Sorum and these guys, the Norwegians, they were paid by the Norwegian Curling Federation. They'd give them $120,000 back in 1980. And they give them and they lease them 4 cars and they take care of them.
Were junior teams paid at the time as well, or was it?
Well, I think they were part of the program. They were
and in the development programs.
They were certainly,
and it wasn't even Olympic sport back then.
No, but it was a European sport. So, I mean, there was European championships and that. So these guys would spend all their money on one team.
Mm-hmm. And eventually that starts to turn into something, even if it doesn't have all the success you can get. Like in Canada, it's you can build through the talent pool, right? I think in a lot of these other countries, they didn't have a talent pool and they wanted to get better. So that's their fast track, right? But I don't think it's necessarily grown the game in other countries. It's not like more people.
They've missed the point. They've missed the whole point of going in bonspiels and playing against other people and having a few drinks and meeting people from other places. And, like you can learn more in a lounge at a curling club than you can learn in going to university at times. When you can sit down with some of these guys upstairs afterwards and, hear what they are doing and what their thoughts are on different things, you can learn a lot. But these guys aren't learning anything.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to teach us then? Since we're in a curling club and we're having a beer in the lounge?
Well, there's, I don't know. I mean, it's, I still, for me, bonspiels is still the fun part of it.
You play it until you can't.
Yeah,
will you push a stick
for
when you
me,
have to?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But do you still enjoy getting out?
The fun part is going out with three of your pals, whether it's club curling on Thursday night or whether it's going to the Banff bonspiel or the Canmore bonspiel, park the car and just go have some fun.
Yeah. Or the van.
Well, yeah, whatever vehicle you drive up there, you park it and you just go have fun. And you shoot the breeze with all these other guys and, you go out in the ice and throw a few rocks and,
And that's starting to shrink for sure, right?
Well, if
that
people realized how much fun that was, more people
would
would curl if they understood that's the fun part of the game that's the fun part of the game.
Well, and it's interesting. I think you're definitely a guy who had it both, right? You had all of the ability on the competitive side, but you also could appreciate and enjoy the social aspect, right? And you seem to equally. Both of it was part of the appeal.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right.
And so you could be ultra competitive. You could yell and scream and be really intense and be anxious and not eat. And at the same time, you could kick back. You could tell a story.
When the game's over, it's over.
Yeah.
But back then you had Labatt's was sponsoring, and you go to hospitality. Every bonspiel had a hospitality room, and like people. It was, you'd stay at the club, and support the club after the games were over. And, it was just.
Yeah. So anything else I haven't asked you that you wanted that you can think of? Anything we missed? There's got to be lots, I'm sure.
Well, there's tons. Are you kidding?
I know. So we can always have a part two.
All you got to do, you could almost just pick a name of a guy and I got a story on him.
Well, okay.
But then I couldn't tell you that story anyways.
What's that?
Well, because it wouldn't be fair to that guy.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have to name names.
Are you kidding? I've got a million stories.
Well, I know you do. We barely scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah.
So should we shut her down now or do you want to have another beer and we'll have a...
No. I don't think so. I got to drive home. That's what they say. What ruined curling? Eh?
All right. Well, give us one story then. What's the best story you can tell us where you can name names?
Oh, geez. So
Kelly looked like was a fun guy, right? Kelly Stearne. Did he?
Oh yeah, Kelly. We'd go and play. Kelly learned how to drive in Brandon, Manitoba. They used to have a bonspiel out there called I don't know. It was a summer spiel. It was in June, and it was at the Ag Center in Brandon. And our team would stay at Curran Park. We'd tent. There was a tent park there, and and Kelly was learning how to drive a stick shift back then. So Glen and I would be sitting at the picnic table, and you could hear Neil and Kelly driving around the campsite, just grinding the gears on Glen's Beamer. But oh geez, we used to go and we'd get the key to the hospitality room before the spiel started, and we'd go up and help ourselves for that first evening and
break it in. A little bit, yeah.
I mean, I was playing. Let me see. I was playing Carrie Burtnick in the final of that bonspiel, and my grandmother. She's 90 at the time. I think she was 92 years old, and she's from Kenora. But she's got this new boyfriend in Brandon, so she's visiting.
A new boyfriend at 92.
Yeah,
good for her. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm out on the ice. We're the only game. There's probably 1,500 people in the stands, and I'm holding the broom. I'm skipping, and we're playing Burtnick. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I got a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's my grandmother, and she goes, "Would you boys like to come over for dinner after the game?" And I said, yeah, Grandma, I'll discuss it with the guys, but right now I'm a little bit busy.
So she wasn't shy.
Oh, no.
Did you go over after the game?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody? Both teams?
No.
Oh, no.
Just no. So my team had to go to my grandmother's house after they just won $10,000 and they want to go and have a party. They're sitting at the...
So it wasn't quite the Van Winkle at your grandma's house?
No, it wasn't. No. Yeah. It was at her boyfriend's house.
Well, the other thing is you when we chat on the phone, you mentioned something about a Matt Baldwin story. You managed to play Matt. That's
another thing. Matt Baldwin used to stay at the Vernon Lodge. Well, in Vernon, you either stayed at the Vernon Lodge or you stayed across the street at... I'm not sure the name of the place now. But anyway, I played Matt Baldwin in the final of the Vernon Cashspiel. And then you'd go over to Matt's room and he'd have like the biggest bar you've ever seen. Like those guys just, when they went to a bonspiel, they just partied.
Yeah.
And they still were in the final of the bonspiel.
And how old would Matt have been at that time?
He probably would have been 60 years old.
And he's in the final.
Yeah.
That comes from tough stock. That he still had pretty good ability to keep it going at that stage. That's something else. Yeah. And did he have a young team at least to keep him going, or was he? Were they all up there at the time? Because you guys would have been young,
let me see.
Right?
It had Tommy Kruger. I don't know if you know Tom, and he had Van Wiesenhofen or something was the lead man. But those guys, they would just, one guy would sit on the bench. They're in the final. One guy'd be sweeping, one guy'd be resting.
Well, and they were all corn broom.
They were.
Too, right?
They were, yeah.
And they could still pound it at that age.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they still could make lots of shots. Matt was a good player.
So did you get a chance to get to know him a little bit then at that time?
Well, a little bit.
Yeah.
He was a good guy, but they didn't like being beat by the young guys again.
No, but they'd smile and maybe have a drink with you, but you could sort of sense that it's a different generation.
Well, that bonspiel, we won that 4 cars there.
Yeah.
And so there was this person I knew there, and she sold me a I don't know if I should say this. Anyway, she sold me a...
We can take out whatever you want later.
Anyways, we drove those cars over the Rogers Pass, and I'll never forget that. We had no radios in the cars, and I wrapped up. We bought a bag of weed. And we wrapped up all these joints, and so
it's okay. It's legal in like 30 states now. Don't worry about it.
So we got about halfway up the Rogers Pass, and there was a snowstorm. The road was closed, so we all pull up behind one another. And we're all standing out on the Rogers Pass, reefer in hand, just higher than kites, happier than shit because we're just driving our brand new cars, and no radios in these things, but it didn't matter because we were singing all the way home anyways.
That's a perfect story.
That's just one of them.
It's like you say, just one. Well,
I got woken up at the Vernon Lodge one time and kicked out of the Vernon Lodge in Vernon for ringing the fire alarm.
Did you do it?
No.
But they assumed
I did it, so they woke me up and kicked me out.
Yeah. Was that the same bonspiel?
Well, it was one of those, yeah. I found out later it was Glen Schmaltz that had rung the fire alarm. He finally admitted it 10 years later.
Where was it? At a club?
Just somewhere? Up here or something. He goes, oh, remember that time you got kicked out of the Vernon Lodge? I go, yeah. He goes, that was me.
Well, now everybody knows. All right. Thanks, Paul.
All right.
That's good. We can always do it again.
Well, yeah, I've got to, you know what? I got to think about that. You want stories. I got stories, but I have to be careful.
Well, just hold on. Think about it for a moment.
Okay. I'm at a bonspiel in Abbotsford.
Yeah.
We qualify out of the A event, which we never did. So we end up going down to Sumas.
Yeah.
We end up going down to Sumas, which is just over the U.S. border, and we go down there and watch football. Okay. This was in January, I believe, and it was the semifinals or something for NFL.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah.
And so we're down there, and we're drinking all day long. We come back over the border, and we come back, and they've decided they're going to have an AA game where the 2 A teams play each other. Well, we didn't want to do that. We'd been hanging out all day Sunday down south of the border drinking Foster's Lager and watching football. So we came back and we decided we'd switch positions. So Stearne skipped and Jackson played third and Neil played second. I played lead, and we got some cat brooms, and Neil was wearing Brent Giles' purple sweater, and we went out there and Pierce shows up with his provincial sweaters with his hearts on and everything, and they're all pumped up and they're ready to go, eh? And we've got
and this isn't what
Abbotsford Curling Club
in the club. Okay.
So we've got our gin and tonics lined up along the glass.
Yeah,
like we're playing for, I don't know. I think the winner gets 12 cases of beer and the loser gets 8. Oh, and we flew there that time
for this.
So we couldn't take the beer back with us anyway.
Maybe you went for the party and you knew the football was on, and it was kind of a
well, we weren't happy about the fact we had to come back and play this stupid game but anyway, we played and we thrashed them in 6 ends.
Oh yeah.
Stearne would call. freezes and make hack weight doubles. Like, it was just a gone show.
I let Kelly call the whole game. You guys
and I had too many, so I had to stay well up in front of Neil because I didn't want to run into him. So,
and you weren't even using the push broom?
No, with cat brooms.
So you kind of used to say, hey, we're not just a push broom team. We can play with anything.
Well, a year later, I see Glen Pearson of Vernon in the hospitality room of the Vernon Lodge, and he says, I could have you offed for $500. You embarrassed me in front of my family and my friends.
It says, I'm going to put a hit on you?
He said, I can have you taken care of.
This is later. This is
the next year when I saw him. The next time I saw him.
Yeah.
That's how upset he was. And I said, look at Glenn, you can have the damn beer. I didn't care. Like, it's not my idea for us to play this game. And why you guys didn't go drinking all day is beyond me anyways. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a classic.
So tell me about your involvement with Canada Revenue and how that started and what actually happened.
Well, I think it was a new Canadian, working for Revenue Canada. He sounded like a new Canadian on the phone, and he phoned me up and he told me that they were he sent me a letter saying that I owed $13,000 in back taxes. And back in I think it was in about 79 or 80, that took me back 5 years to 1976 when I first started winning money. So they figured I owed $14,000 in back taxes. So I ignored the letter because I thought those guys can't be that insane to do that. But no, pretty soon they started garnishing my wages when I worked for the city of Calgary.
Really?
That got my attention.
Huh.
So then I phoned this guy up and I explained to him, and I shouldn't have. I should have gone to all the curlers, all the guys that spend money going to bonspiels and everything. I should have gone and said, why don't you guys help me pay these taxes, and then we'll all form businesses next year, because obviously that's how we can become professionals. We can start a curling business, and then we can write off we have to pay taxes, then we can write off all our expenses. So I told that to the guy, and I probably shouldn't. I said, you realize everybody's going to start their businesses and write off expenses. There's like 1 million curlers in Canada, and probably only about 3 or 4 teams make any money at the game. Mm-hmm. The rest spend money. So everybody, I'm sure, would be quite happy to, pay taxes on this.
This was a phone conversation you had with the fellow from Revenue Canada at that point?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. After he started garnishing my wages because I ignored him.
Mm-hmm. What was his response?
So anyway. Well, he figured after that phone call, he figured that maybe I had a pretty good idea after all, that maybe garnishing my wages wasn't such a good idea, and taxing us wasn't such a good idea after all.
Did you hear back from him afterwards, or what was the correspondence after that happened?
No, they just sent me a check for what they'd taken off that they'd garnished from me, and that was the end of it.
And that was the end of it, until they started to look at other players. I know Wayne Madaw became kind of known in the media that they were chasing him at one point, as an example, later on in the 90s.
I don't think they're very well organized. I don't think that, if they'd have realized what they were getting in. Some guy comes along and he reads an article in the paper that says these guys are making this much money, and he looks into it and figures out they're not paying any taxes, then he thinks he's hit a gold mine. He works for the federal government.
Not only that, you were barely 17, 18, and they're trying to capture the money that you were earning. That's,
No. I mean, I was 17, 18 when I was making that money.
Exactly.
And then they were trying to capture it when I was like 21 or 22.
Yeah, but it's it's incredible that they would actually go after you in that way, right? You think about it. At the time you're barely out of high school, and it sounds interesting that they didn't really actually have any. There was no conversation to be had. It was just they sent you letters and said we're going to do this. Then they ended up. They actually were able to garnish your wages. I find that amazing. I guess they got a lot of power in that organization, I'm sure, when they want to do things.
They got more power than I have. But I mean,
you never got a lawyer involved or anything like that? Kind of handle it on your own?
I mean, I wish I would have, because the lawyer probably would have said, look, you guys are starting your own business now, and you're going to write off your airfare and your entry fees and your hotels and your food. And you know what? If you win some money and you have to pay taxes, oh well.
So in 1978, when you went to Grindelwald, Switzerland, so Warren Hansen was actually sent to go along as your coach as well.
That was Warren's first coaching gig.
Yeah? What was his real
Canadian
involvement
Curling
at that?
Association, the Canadian Curling Association decided that Warren should be the coach. Because when I went in 76 to Aviemore, Scotland, they said, it was just my high school coach that had been following us all through the Canadians and the provincials. He just came to Scotland. The Canadian Curling Association figured that they needed a wise man or somebody a little bit more involved.
Well, also in 76, it was still a schoolboy in that you had to be in high school, whereas in 78, that now was a junior rink. You could play with players from elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, but we weren't playing high school players in 76. The rest of the world was junior. It was junior. Only Canada was high.
Did you have much involvement with Warren, or during that trip then? Was there much interaction?
Warren had a heck of a party. He had a great time. I think I saw him twice.
Yeah. There wasn't any strategy conversations that you guys had or anything like that?
Yeah. Warren would put a sign on the door that said, "Wake me up when you go to the curling club."
And so it was sort of a mutually agreed, look, you're here because the CCA is sending you, and we're our team, and we coach ourselves kind of thing, yeah.
Well, at the time, Warren was playing, I think, second for either Armstrong or, Warren was still a competitive curler, I think, at the time. And he'd played us many times, and he knew that, we'd been winning for years. He really wasn't going to show us much. So, and he knew that, and he was good about it. He said, there's not much I'm going to coach you on, Paul. Just if you need any of my help, then just ask. And that was the deal we had.